Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello friends, welcome to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. Myself, Dr. Vinod L. Desai, Associate Professor, PG Department of Computer Science and Technology, BAOUGujarat, Gujarat. Today we will talk about Internet and its surrounding concepts. So before we proceed, as we know that in today's environment, all are living in the world of technology-enabled devices. Whether the devices are any objects or our day-to-day life used objects. Whenever we are talking about the technology-enabled devices, it may be artificial intelligence related, Internet of Things related, or any other kind of devices. But we can't think of lives today without the Internet. So all the technology today we are using in our day-to-day life are enabled through the Internet. So before we proceed, we need to know the Internet, its definition and its evolution. So Internet is nothing but the full form of Internet, we can say, is interconnected network. So what is Internet? So initially the Internet was developed by the Department of Defense in 1969 by the US Department of Defense for the military purpose. But later on it was evolved and the researchers started to use it for the scientific implementation. As it grew day by day, it was earlier known as the ARPANET. ARPANET's full form is the Advanced Research Project Agency for Network. Computers were then installed in the US universities for the scientific related projects. ARPANET grew day by day. Administrations of the systems became distributed to a number of organizations, including the National Science Foundations. This shift began the transformation to the science-oriented ARPANET into the commercially minded and funded Internet used by millions today. In India, the Internet service started by VNSL. So let's have the understanding of the Internet, how the Internet evolved, how it works, and how it is categorized. So whenever we are talking about Internet, it is generally categorized into three layers, or the layers, so we can say it is three-tiered. The first tier is the companies who are providing a basic foundations for establishing such kind of services. There are various companies who has already scattered their services in terms of, we can say, spreading the optical fiber network optical cable networks across the world under the sea. So the tier 1 is consisting of such kind of companies who makes a foundation for Internet services. Without these foundations, we can't imagine Internet across the globe or world. Now next is tier 2 or layer 2. The tier 2, layer 2 companies who buys tier 1 and reaches to us through towers, or we can say service provider tiers. The companies like Reliance, BSNL, Airtel comes under this layer 2. Now layer 3 consisting of the companies who buys Internet from these tier 2 companies. So generally this three tier makes the whole Internet concept. The Internet acts as a pipeline to transfer or transmit the data or informations from one organizations, one locations to another location. As the heart of most network is a server, a fast computer with large amount of memory and storage space. The server controls the overall environment and the working of the organizations, or we can say it transfers the informations from the client to the server. So there will be two concepts which involves in the Internet environment. So whenever we talks about Internet, there would be two entities. One would be the client and second one would be the server. The client would request for certain kind of data, while the server at the other end will receive the request and serves this request by processing the amount at server side and sending the response back to the client. The internet, as we already know, it's a service, but from who or from where we are getting this service? So for that, there are certain organizations which are responsible to provide such kind of services. So ISP is known as Internet Service Provider, who is responsible to provide the internet services, which allows the users to access the internet through their servers. Once you have an account with the internet service providers, you can access the web through a, we can say, well-known browser. It may be a Google Chrome or any other which is compatible and convenient to the user. A browser is an application or software which enables users to access the internet. There are various mechanisms to connect to the internet. Among that, the first one is dial-up mechanism. What is dial-up mechanism? So it's a dial-up connection uses a standard phone line. If we are having a phone line at our home and we want to access the internet, we can connect our internet service through a dial-up connections. So if it uses a standard phone line and analog modem to access the internet at data transfer rates of up to 56 kbps. Dial-up internet uses a phone line to connect your computer or other devices to your internet service provider's connections via your modem. Working of dial-up connections or process, we can say. So generally what happens, every dial-up services receives a dial-up internet access number like a telephone number from their internet service providers. The user calls this number using their computer and modem. The ISP modem then answers this call and connects to the user's modem. Both modems establishes a connection together, establishing a speed and protocol, and then the user's modem sends connection request to the ISP's server. The ISP verifies this account and request and gives them access to the internet. The user can go online and browse web pages as per the requirement. Data transfer occurs via their computers and ISP's servers. There are various advantages of using this dial-up mechanism. Among that, the first one is availability. The dial-up is arguably the most accessible type of internet service, given that users can access it from anywhere that phone line exists. The requirement is only the phone line that should be existing. It's great options for people who live in rural or remote areas that don't have access to other kinds of internet devices. Second is it is cheaper. Again, most of the equipment necessary for dial-up connections is only the phone lines. Already exist, dial-up tends to be a cheaper one. Then after another advantage is security. Using the dedicated phone lines of dial-up connection means hackers don't intercept the signals as easily as they could have with other kind of mechanism. Then it saves energy. Compared to other kinds of internet mechanisms, dial-up uses little power. For those concerned with their energy usage, this is the best options to use for internet accessibility. Along with advantages, there are certain disadvantages from which the dial-up connection suffers. Among that, the first one is slow speed. As we know that dial-up internet is slow, it's the slowest type of internet communication mechanism. For websites and online services that need quick speeds, this is not a suitable option. Limited functionality. Because dial-up is slow, it can't always perform as user needs or expects. Streaming videos or gaming online may be impossible using this mechanism. Third disadvantage is conflict with phone lines. Because dial-up internet relies on a phone line to connect, you can't use your mobile same time while using the internet access. Outdated technology. Ultimately, today if we are talking about, then it is an outdated technology if you want to have the internet access through a dial-up mechanism. Though it's not obsolete, many other types of internet connections have surpassed it in terms of speed, usefulness and reliability. The next mechanism of internet connection is DSL, that is Digital Subscriber Line. The DSL service uses a broadband connection mechanism which makes it much faster than the previous dial-up connection. DSL connects to the internet via phone line but does not require to have a landline at home. Unlike dial-up, you will be able to use the internet and your phone simultaneously, while it is not possible using the dial-up mechanism. There are certain advantages using the DLS mechanism. Among that, the first one is affordability. DSL is one of the cheapest internet options available, thanks to the existing telephone lines that makes it possible. Second is high speed file download. The technology performs better over traditional dial-up modems or methods, which optimally allows us to access and download the data. Availability. DSL is significantly more available than other internet services because it is run over telephone lines that are nearly anywhere. Then after, no bandwidth sharing. As we know, with digital subscriber lines, you don't have to share bandwidth with your neighborhood like with cable connections. Everyone using DSL has their own dedicated connections. Greater reliability is another advantage. Speed reliability is a concern with internet connections. DSL services are reliable connections because the connection is specific to your telephone line. Because of this, peak traffic hours don't affect your connections. Availability of DSL modems by ISP. So your internet service providers can send you a modem, a gateway that connects to multiple PCs or devices at the same time. So apart from these advantages, it suffers from certain limitations. Among that, the first one is speed issue. Digital subscriber lines is not as fast as cable or fiber optics. It is also not ideal for big businesses. Homes and small businesses operate with DSL internet based. Home users download more data than they upload. Small businesses prefer digital subscriber lines for activities like sending data. Another or third mechanisms of internet connection is the cable. As we know that whenever we are talking about connections or any kind of connectivity, the cables comes into our mind. So in telecommunications, cable internet is the type of broadband connections that uses cable television infrastructure to provide homes or building with internet access. It runs through coaxial cable, the same cables used for TV or televisions, because these copper cables are used to deliver TV services. Cables are having certain advantages. Among that, the first one is fast connection. As it is a cable and it is already installed, you can achieve more than sufficient speed for most purposes. Users likely get internet speed from 50 Mbps up to 1000 Mbps depending on their budget. Second is it is widely available. As it uses coaxial cables, most homes have already set up the necessary equipment or infrastructures. Even urban areas possesses the necessary infrastructure for such kind of services. Bundling. Many cable companies offer bundled packages that includes both television and internet, so which is cost effective, and we doesn't need to invest for both kind of mechanisms, for cable as well as for connectivity. So it is very cheaper in that sense also. Reliable. Unlike other forms of connection mechanism like satellite internet, cable is not affected by seasonal weather or storms. It is also not affected by a proximity to your ISP like DSL. Next is easy to install. You can install it yourself as long as your home is properly wired or internet connectivity. It also suffers from certain disadvantages. As we know that cables offer certain advantages, but it also having a limitations in the form of it requires connections. Definitely, without the cable connections, we can't access the internet services. Next is it uses shared bandwidth. Of course, speeds tends to fluctuate during high traffic hours. With cable, you have to share your bandwidth with your neighbors. If other subscribers in surrounding residents are using too much upstream or downstream through at the same time, you are likely to experience the speed fluctuations. Next, it uses data caps. Okay, so there will be we can say upper boundary up to certain extent that limits your accessibility of data. Some operators monitors the bandwidth each subscriber uses. So what your ISP does next is impose data caps, limiting the amount of data of internet that can be used during a given period of time. So these are the certain disadvantages from where we can say cable mechanism is suffering. Another connection mechanism is wireless connections. So up to this we were talking about wired connection mechanism. Now there are certain, or today we are living in the area of wireless environment. So there are certain mechanisms or vast amount of mechanisms are available which help us to connect our devices with the internet without using any physical wire. So among that, the Wi-Fi and mobile services providers fall under this category. So internet connectivity is made available via radio waves, and the internet can be connected anywhere, irrespective of the location. We doesn't need to bother about where we are and from where we will get the internet service. As we are dealing with Wi-Fi or wireless, it will be accessible. So examples of wireless connections are Wi-Fi. It stands for wireless fidelity, which allows high-speed internet connectivity without the use of wires. Then 5G and the next generation internet service technologies. Next G's service is most commonly used with mobile phones, and it connects wirelessly through your ISP's network. However, these types of connections are not always the fast as DSL or cable. They will also limit the amount of data you can use each month or during a particular time period. Next is satellite. A satellite connection uses broadband but does not require cable or phone lines. It connects to the internet using a satellite orbiting the Earth. As a result, it can be used almost anywhere in the world, but the connections may be affected by the weather or storm. Next is Integrated Service Digital Network. ISDN allows users to send audio or video data using telephone lines. Now, this is what we were talking about, the mechanisms to establish an internet connections, either through a cable or we can say connection, or through a connectionless environment. Now we will see certain devices which helps us to access the internet or which plays a vital role while accessing the internet service. Among that, the first one is modem. Modem is very important. Without modem, we can't imagine regarding the internet service. So what the modem is? So generally, the modem is a device that allows our computers and other devices to communicate with each other over telephone lines, cable lines or satellite connections. It allows the internet connections among the different devices. The term is short for modular demodulation or demodulator, and they are essential for connecting to the internet and for sending and receiving data over network. In the early days of computing, they were used primarily for connecting computers to remote terminals, allowing users to access informations and services that were not available locally. Today, however, modems are used in a wide variety of applications, including internet access, online gaming, telecommunicating, and more. They work by converting digital signals to analog signals and vice versa, which allows computers and other devices to communicate. The most common types of modems includes dial-up modem, cable modems, digital subscriber line modems, fiber optic modems, wireless modems, and also known as Wi-Fi modems and satellite modems. Another concept is router. Now, when we are talking about router, the concept comes in our mind regarding hub and switch. So these three terms are very important when we are talking about internet connectivity or accessing the internet. So as we know that hub allows us to establish the connections of our devices with the internet. It receives the data and spreads among all the connected devices. While we can say switch is there, which is also responsible for receiving the or establishing the connections with many ports, receiving the data and sending the data to a particular recipient instead of spreading to all the connected devices. Now the third concept comes in our mind is all about routers. So what the router is, as the name suggests, it routes the specific data intended to the specific recipient among different networks. So router enables us to establish the connection among many networks. So router allows us devices to connect and share data over the internet or an intranet. As we know, a router is a gateway that passes data between one or more local area networks. Okay, routers use the internet protocol to send IP packets containing data and IP addresses of sending and destination devices located on another network or in another LAN. Routers resides between LANs where sending and receiving devices are connected, as we know. Essentially, the router establishes the local area network between devices in your home and the modem links those devices to the internet. So router establishes or makes it possible for the people to send and receive the data or establish the communication between different networks very easily. Basics of internet and extranet. So what is intranet and what is extranet is very important. So when we are talking about intranet, so it is a private network that the companies use to ensure secure collaboration and communication among all the employees. So it is generally, if we are thinking about a single organization which is creating their network for the smooth functioning of their organizations, so that the employees can access the data as and when required, but it will be within the boundary, not outside the organization. So that is called intranet. At the opposite end, if we are talking about extranets, then what it stands for? So it helps an organization connect with its suppliers and customers, or we can say it extends its boundary outside the organization up to its suppliers and customers. It thus helps different teams in an organization to work in collaborations to achieve the goal or for the smooth functioning of an organization. Then, if you are talking about intranet, the next point regarding the intranet is internal departments of the company and all the employees of an organization make use of the intranet, while business partners, suppliers and customers use the extranet. In an intranet is used for establishing communication among internal employees, used in telephone, directories and many more, while an extranet is used for sending emails, accessing data, checking the status of various vendors, orders and many more services which is dealing with customers and vendors. That means intranet is highly secured as it is within the boundary of an organization. It is not dealing outside the organization. So we can say the intranet is highly secured, while the extranet establishes a very secure mechanism using a VPN technology over the level of internal medium security. A single organization performs the regulation of the intranet, while in extranet, multiple organizations perform the regulations of the extranet. A single organization owns the internet, while a multiple organizations owns the extranet. As we already discussed the difference or the concept through analyzing the difference, what is internet and what is extranet. So generally, if we want to talk about who is using the extranet, internet we already know it is used by a particular organizations for their smooth functioning of day-to-day activities through their employees' access. But extranet are having a wider usage. Among that, the most users are financial institutions and banks use extranets to allow users to carry out their transactions. Okay, we know that we are now through the mobile phones or devices, we are easily making the banking services setting at our home. So we are using the extranet kind of mechanism. At the same time, other financial institutions allows us such kind of services through which we can save our time and cost. Next is government authorities such as the US Internal Revenue Services use extranets to allow users to submit e-documents. Okay, web design firms and architects use extranets to engage clients in their projects. Publishing firms to share content with authors, freelancers, and other editorial staffs. The academic sector also uses an extranet for online learning and administration. Suppliers use extranet to update their customers on their inventory, services, and status. So these are various uses of the extranet services. As we already discussed the concept of internet, its connection mechanism, and internet and extranets along with the mostly used devices in terms of modems and routers, we will now talk about network. What is network? So network, if you are thinking, then it is a collection of different small network. We can say a network of networks, we can say. Okay, a small network, another small networks, and we are combining this kind of networks, then we can say it is a larger network. So network is simply defined as a network of networks. When more than one computers are connected with each other to communicate, to transfer or transmit the data with each other, we can say the network is there. Network is there. So there are various types of transmissions mode involved in a network. It is categorized in terms of simplex mode, half duplex mode, and full duplex mode. So what is simplex transmission mode in a network? So in simplex mode, the communications is unidirectional, means on a one-way direction. Only one of the two devices on a link can transmit. That means at a time one device can transmit and other can receive. Keyboards and traditional monitors are the examples of simplex transmission modes. Now moving next to the point, that is half duplex. So in a half duplex mode, each stations can be in a positions to transmit data, okay, either in a directions. That means, but not at the same time. Okay, there will be two entities involved in the communications. One would be sender and another would be receiver. But in a half duplex mode, at that time, one can send and another will receive. After receiving, the another can send and the opposite end can receive, but not at the same time. So this is what a half duplex mechanism is. While in a full duplex mode, both stations can transmit data and receive data simultaneously, concurrently, at the same time. One common example is a telephone network. When two peoples are communicating with each other, they can send and receive data with each other and access it without any problems. So network enables us to make the data transmissions very easy, either using a particular mechanism, whether it is a simplex mechanism in which only a unidirectional data transmissions takes place, while in a half duplex mode, only at a time a single device can send the data and then after we can say another devices can receive or send the data to the opposite end. The best examples of half duplex was the walkie-talkie, we can say. Then in a full duplex, we already know we are using or we are living in this era. We are using the devices which enables us to send and receive the data simultaneously without any problems. Thank you very much. So in these sessions, we learned the concepts of internets, its importance, various ways or mechanisms to establish the connections, and the devices used in the internet connections. Apart from that, we also discussed the difference of intranet and extranet and the transmissions mode. Thank you very much.